All right. Welcome to this week's episode of Talkin Folk. I think this is going to be a really either interesting episode or a total failure. So we're going to find out. This is Nick, and I'm here with Joe. What's up, Joe?
Hey, Nick. Excited to be here. Yeah, this should be a fun one. It's a little bit different.
Either that or we're going to crash and burn miserably. So
We'll do it together. It'll be fun.
yeah, we haven't done it yet, so we're about to find out. Today we're talking about Rayland Baxter's 2019 album, Good Mmornin, which is how we'll say it for now, but it's Good Mmornin, and it is his tribute to the late Mac Miller. So I think we're going to have some fun talking about the differences between the two. So Joe, before we get into it, how you been? You haven't been on the show in a little while. You been all right?
It's been a while. Yeah, we've been hanging in there. You know, we've been staying home and doing a lot of nothing, but been playing a lot of music and listening to a lot of music. I think I found this album before quarantine, but during quarantine, I've listened to it on repeat, which is why I was pretty pumped when you wanted to do this.
Yeah, and quite honestly, I have heard these songs because Rayland Baxter, every time he releases something new, I listen to him a lot anyway. So it kind of pops up in my Spotify feeds or, the release radar stuff. So I've heard all of these songs only knowing them as Rayland Baxter songs. And then, last week or 2 weeks ago, you were like, hey, you want to do that Rayland Baxter Mac Miller album? And I was like, they did an album together? And you're like, no, that doesn't exist. He did a tribute.
So I didn't know it either. It blew my mind. I was really getting into one of the songs, and I was like, I think I've heard this song somewhere before. Who the hell sings this?
Right.
Looked it up and saw it was a Mac Miller song. I was like, I wonder if this whole album is a Mac Miller album. And it is. So I felt a little silly after that one, but it's really good.
Yeah. So I haven't ever, I don't think, maybe I'll recognize some of them when we play them later, but I haven't heard any of the Mac Miller versions of these songs. I don't think. So I'm actually pretty excited to hear them live on this show. We're going to do both. We're going to play the Rayland Baxter versions and the parts of the Mac Miller versions as well. So we could talk about the differences and just see what they're like, and obviously pay a little bit of respect to Mac Miller. So we can talk about who Mac Miller was in a little bit in case the audience of this show doesn't really know who he is. Rayland hasn't had an episode on Talkin Folk yet, and I think he will get one, probably his next full album that he releases of his own material. So we'll do like a breakdown on his career and stuff, or his musical talents. But Rayland was kind of in the same boat that I was, and you probably were at a certain point where he didn't even know who Mac Miller was, and he was at music festival, which I think he said was Okeechobee Music Festival in like 2015, 2016.
I think it was 2016.
And he was playing, they were both playing at the same festival, and Rayland was done with his set, and he sees just like mass amounts of people going to the main stage.
Yep.
And he's like, oh, I got to see what's going on here. And he saw what turned out to be Mac Miller come flying out, and he had a ton of energy and got the whole crowd into it. And then what he says is he bought, was it the Good AM album, Good Morning album itself?
Yeah, it was Good AM. Good, GO:OD AM. And there's a lot of stuff going on in that title. So yeah, he grabbed that on the bus ride home back to Nashville and listened to the whole thing the way back.
Yeah. And then obviously like cycled through his other albums and kept up to date with Mac Miller at the time. And then in 2018, Mac Miller passed away. And, last year, Rayland decides to do a tribute to him. So since we probably won't have another Mac Miller episode on this show, obviously it's not in our genre, but this is a good bridge to it. do you want to talk a little bit about Mac Miller and his career, since it's obviously whose music we're really talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mac Miller's. I actually have been super impressed. I was not a devout Mac Miller fan before really getting into this too much. And since this album, I've really dove into his work quite a bit more, and he's super impressive. So he's from Pittsburgh, and one thing people will call him, and he gets commented as, is a white Jewish kid from Pittsburgh, and he's a rapper.
Right.
Folks often think that's pretty different, right? Not what you think of when you think of a rapper. But that wasn't a big deal for him, and he never really cared. So yeah, he grew up and at a young age loved making music. He learned how to play 6 instruments, and at the age of 14, he just got really into rapping. So he started out making mixtapes, kind of getting on the freestyle scene in Pittsburgh. He came out as Easy Mac in the beginning and had a couple mixtapes. Yeah, he had some funny names. And then he rebranded as Mac Miller.
Right. This is right now in the background. We got 2009, which, from what I understand, is that Mac Miller's like most famous song. It seems to pop up if you type in Mac Miller, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's up there. I'm actually not positive. So anyway, so what's really cool about him is he, in like, I think 2012-ish or 2010, he made quite a few mixtapes, and he really got out there and got his name out there on YouTube. And he was kind of like a YouTube sensation, and he was one of the first artists to do that and made really awesome music videos. But his original work was kind of like labeled as frat rap by some people, because it's kind of juvenile in some ways.
Okay.
Like, talks about, growing up and partying and all that sort of stuff. So he really evolved over his career, and I'd say the stuff that Rayland covered is his more mature work, and he's definitely more mature as a musician as well. You'll hear a lot of jazzy chords and that sort of thing. And yeah, it's super cool. So he changed quite a bit over the course of his career.
Yeah, and so this album that we're going to go through, or a couple songs from this album that Rayland did, is not just from one moment in time. It's from, like you said, multiple points in his career, but just the more mature things, or the things that Rayland was really impressed with, or whatever. So then what happened in 2018? Obviously, there's proceeds that this album goes to, which I believe is for the Mac Miller is a foundation for substance abuse, I believe, that the proceeds go to from this album. So,
I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So I'm just gonna assume Mac Miller passed away from some sort of either drug or alcohol induced death.
Yeah. He struggled with substance abuse his entire career. He didn't, like his early years, he would rap about partying and like drinking cheap beer and that sort of thing. But as he became more famous, he got more anxious and depressed, and at some point turned to drugs.
Right.
And it was kind of part of the scene too, when he was a rapper on the scene in LA. So yeah, he started taking drinking a lot of codeine and that sort of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, throughout his career, he definitely struggled with drugs, and he ended up dying from a fentanyl, cocaine, alcohol overdose. It's pretty tough.
Yeah, and I think the attention that this album got, was part of it was actually to raise awareness for helping people in that type of situation, maybe substance abuse, addiction type issues. So I'm glad to give it some plays, give it some airtime to hopefully help a good cause too. So he's Rayland. Now let's flip over to Rayland. So he hadn't decided he was going to record this yet, but he was invited last year, I believe, or maybe late 2018. Let me double check. No, January of 2019, he was invited to Pace Studios in New York City, and they said, "Hey, you're gonna play a set. It's awesome. We want you to play a cover." And he was like, "Oh shit, what are we gonna play?" Decides to do Mac Miller's Come Back to Earth. And I guess they were like figuring it out in the van on the way to the studio. And the session that they did in Pace Studios was like the second time they played it, and they absolutely nailed it. We're going to do that song later. I think we're going to do one before that comes up on the album right here in a second, which is Small Worlds. I might actually play the Paced version because it's actually pretty cool that was the second time they played it, and it is different than the version that's on the actual album that came out. The first one that we're going to do and actually talk about is Small Worlds. So I think we'll start with the Rayland version, play a little bit of that, play a little bit of the Mac Miller version, go back to the Rayland version. How's that sound?
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
All right. So here it is.
What does that sound, Nick?
That's the beginning of that song. I think it's like a glass with ice in it.
Ice cubes in a glass.
Yeah.
It's not a spoon in a cup, though.
It's not a spoon in a cup. That's right.
The world is so small till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it breaks. She hated when I call and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope I never keep you waiting. Think I know it all.
So I'm about to play the Mac Miller song in a second, but how much is this vibe the same in the two songs, would you say, since you know them both?
They're similar.
Because this is like slow, bluesy jazz, like this is lounge music almost. It's cool.
It's super awesome. I love the intro too, and then the key change. Rayland does a really cool job with that. I don't remember if Mac Miller's version does that, but like I was saying, this is like his more mature work. So there's a ton of chords with sevenths and little half step changes, kind of like a jazz vibe, like you're saying.
Right.
It's super cool, and the bass line, I think the bass line is pretty similar. Rayland Baxter's bassist, I don't know his name. He's very good.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna pause it for a sec. Let's start the Mac Miller version. What were you gonna say?
What I like about this song is it's lighter in terms of the vibe, and it's funny because it's kind of a love song in the beginning, and it reminds me of like young love in high school, and how you're liking a girl, but you're like trying to hold yourself back because you don't want to dive in head over heels and get too involved, and you want to keep things going, but you want to make it move slow, but at the same time you don't want to do her an injustice and make her wait and wait for you and wait around for you. So yeah, it's a really cool vibe. It reminds me of like a high school love.
Yeah. All right, so now here is the Mac Miller version of Small Worlds. And what did this come out on? Did it come out on, was there an album called Small Worlds itself?
No, I think this was on Swimming.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So
you're right.
That was one of his last albums. I think it was the last album he did before he passed.
Yeah. Yep.
And they had another album come out after he passed. They released more of his work.
Cool. All right, here we go.
Yeah. The world is so small till it ain't. Yeah. I'm building up a wall till it breaks.
It's actually, it's not as different as I thought it was gonna be.
It's not as different. I mean, so Mac became a better singer over his career, but he's a different singer than Rayland Baxter is.
Right.
It's
like the Rayland version that he's trying to go for is like this smooth, it's actually a jazz song when Rayland plays it. And this actually has the same chord structure and key, changes and everything, but it doesn't have the same vibe. which I think was the intentional thing from Rayland to try and put it there maybe. But I actually I like the Mac Miller. Like I like his voice.
They're both super cool. Like,
Yeah.
I can't decide which one I like better. I love them both. What I think is also very cool about this version is, I didn't realize this until today, John Mayer is playing guitar on this album. They were actually
cool.
decent friends. And if you listen close to that guitar riff, you're like, ooh, this dude's a good guitar player.
Right.
The world is so small till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't.
It's smooth. Yeah, actually, so I pulled this up on YouTube, this the Mac Miller version here, and on the right there's a John Mayer Small Worlds cover, like he probably does because he obviously knows how to play it.
Yeah, super
I
cool.
never keep you waiting. I never keep you waiting, waiting, waiting.
There's little John Mayer right there.
Yeah. So what I like about this that I don't think is in the Rayland version is this audio that keeps panning back and forth between ear to ear. I assume it's Mac Miller's voice.
Yeah, got a bad attitude, playing till I'm out of moves. No need for shame, I get more peace at slow speeds. Go beat the game, young control freak.
I mean, his rap is super cool too.
Below freezing, snow season made me. They know that I so need my space.
I love that the instruments kind of tweak up and down, like you get that little pause right there, little bass line, whereas Rayland's, he puts together like a more serious jazz tune.
Right.
It's different.
The Mac Miller version actually like treads on, instead of blues and jazz, it's like more like funk and jazz.
Yeah.
All right, I want to hear Rayland's version of that rap now.
Till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it rains.
Does he go for it? He does, right?
The third verse?
I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
so. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he goes for it. It's good.
I hope I never keep you waiting.
There's definitely a lot. I think he's playing an organ in the back there. Kind of over the top, holding the chords. It's different.
Yeah, there we go.
Got a bad attitude, playing till I'm out of moves. No need for shame, I get peace at slow speeds. Go beat the game, young control freak. It's cold.
There's a really cool third verse as well, where I think in the Mac Miller version they kind of pause the instruments and he just raps. And it's a crazy deep verse. It's kind of this crazy self-introspection, and it's heavy.
And that's what a lot of, from doing the reading about, I pulled up all the lyrics just to read through them while I was listening to the Rayland versions, and all of the comments and everything are just about how introspective all these songs were, and I'm assuming that's probably why Rayland chose them as well. But he was, whether it's about relationships or, drug abuse or, whatever it was that was on his mind at the time. That seems to be the overwhelming subject in the Rayland album that he put together.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that I read was that Mac Miller was not like he was upset, but he was not thrilled about the fact that everyone kept drawing the links to him and Ariana Grande.
Yeah.
Like in every song, they're like, oh, this must be about that. And he's like, well, I've been writing these songs for like years, like before all this.
Well,
So this is that third verse where he goes deep into the rap,
that's why we write these songs.
and it changes up a little bit.
Myself to hold on. I can feel my fingers slipping in the motherfucking instant I'll be gone. Do you want it all if it's all mediocre? Staring at the wall and the wall full of posters. Looking at my dreams, who I wanna be. I guess you got to see, to believe. I've been a fool, but it's cool, that's what human beings do. Keep your eye to the sky, never glued to your shoe. Guess there was a time when my mind was consumed. The sun coming out, the clouds are gonna move. Don't tell me nothing but the truth.
The way he sings this makes it actually feel natural for him.
It's almost, yeah. That's the thing. When I first listened to this, I thought he wrote these songs because he's so smooth and so natural with them.
All right, I want to hear the Rayland version, the Mac Miller version of that same breakdown. We'll go to the next song after that.
That's really all it takes. We don't need nothing but today. The world is so small till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it break. She hate it when I call, and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope I never keep you waiting.
He still
Yeah,
does he still does the snaps and the piano, which is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10 I get it wrong. That's why I wrote this song. Tell myself to hold on. I can feel my fingers slipping in a motherfucking instant I'll be gone. Do you want it all if it's all mediocre? Staring at the wall and the wall full of posters. Looking at my dreams, who I wanna be. I guess you gotta see it to believe. Ooh, I've been a fool, but it's cool, that's what human beings do. Keep your eyes to the sky, never glued to your shoes. Guess there was a time when my mind was consumed, but the sun coming out now, clouds start to move. Don't tell me nothing but the truth. I'm tired, I don't got a spare second. Win or lose, I don't keep count, nobody checking.
So that part was pretty different than Rayland Baxter's version. There were some different chord changes.
Yeah, I was not expecting. So, knowing the Rayland Baxter version, I was not expecting the Mac Miller version during that last rap part to be so mellow, I guess is the right term. Like that actually kind of falls off a cliff in both songs in terms of musical production behind it. It's like just the vocals and obviously the snaps and the piano or whatever it is, but I wasn't sure if that was just something that Rayland wanted to make like a tribute to, you know, Mac Miller's rap or whatever, but it actually is how I wasn't expecting that to be how the song actually was. I really like that song.
He strips it down. So I think that, so in that last verse, one part that's super interesting to me is, like I said, it's super introspective. And he kind of says, like, he's looking at the posters on his wall and he's measuring himself up against all these people. And I feel like that's the crux of a lot of these mental health problems.
Right.
You look at yourself and you're like, who am I? How am I ever going to be as good as these people are? You start measuring yourself against the world. And if you don't like where you are, it can leave you in a dark place.
Yeah.
I feel
pretty
like
tough.
Yeah. So I feel like that was a nice window into what a lot of his songs are like that, but he gives you a nice window into his mind. It's wild.
Yeah. That was cool. All right. We're going to do Come Back to Earth, but I think let's do the one that he did with the Paste studio session. I personally like that version more than the one that ended up on the album, because it feels a little bit more raw than the one that ended up on the album. The one on the album is actually really good, but it just feels like more emotional because obviously I bet that was something that he was like thinking about at the time and whatnot. So, all right, here is the Rayland Baxter version of Come Back to Earth from the 2019 Pace Studio sessions.
Oh, my regrets look just like text I shouldn't send. And I got neighbors, they're more like
one of the things I like the most about this song, this version, is the guitar in it.
Yeah, super cool. Chords are incredible.
Yeah.
I'll do anything for a way out of my head. In my own way, this feel like living some alternate reality. And I was drowning, but now I'm swimming through stressful waters to relieve. Yeah, all the things I do to spend a little time in hell. Yeah, and what I won't tell you, I'll probably never tell myself. The sunshine.
I'm gonna pause it there before he gets into the next verse. So this is the song in particular that got talked about from Mac Miller. Is this about your life pre and post, Ariana Grande and like breaking up and whatnot? But he's actually from the comments in some of the Mac Miller lyrics and then the actual video that got posted as what's that called? Music video itself. It's actually really about how he feels like distanced and separated from his own life, because at that point he was touring like crazy and he just felt disconnected from himself, if that makes sense. Like he was almost like watching himself, it got so big, whatever, and like you're like almost like a third party watching yourself from above or a different perspective. Obviously, like you can make anything seem like a relationship song or whatever, but for him it was his relationship like with himself.
Yeah, and I think he hated that a little bit, that everything got related back to her.
Right.
But she was such a star, and it's hard to not talk about that, right?
Yeah.
She is such a star. So I think, yeah, that gets brought up all the time. But yeah, I've heard that from a lot of musicians, that you get so big, you stop having like genuine relationships with people. You get on stage, you sing, you come off, you go to the next place, and you don't just have genuine relationships and interactions with normal people, and everything's about you being famous.
Yeah.
So I guess it seems lonely.
And it goes from, what's funny, because these artists, they're trying to get to be big and they're trying to get to be on stage. And it's like there's a famous John Lennon quote that's been going around recently because of what's going on with all the protests and whatnot. And the story is what the summation of what he's trying to say is: the fastest way for me to reach the most amount of people is for me to be up on stage. Right. Like that's the easiest way for him to talk to the most amount of people. So like that's an attitude when you're probably on the up and up. And then John Lennon himself like wanted to get away from that towards the end of his career as well. Like that's just kind of like you go over that peak and then you're just like, get me out of this.
It's wild.
Touring for a long time or whatever it is. So anyway, let's start the Mac Miller version of the same song right now.
My regrets look just like Texas.
All right, this is so different. That was not what I was expecting in the first 2 seconds.
He comes in hot with the chorus on his voice.
Oh, we'll start again.
My regrets look just like texts I shouldn't send. And I got neighbors that more like strangers. We could be friends. I just need a way out of my head.
I really like that line. My regrets look like texts I shouldn't send, or should not send, however he says it. Just like the things that you shouldn't say, and then you send it, and you're like, oh, fuck.
Can't get that
or
one
like,
back.
Yeah.
Now it's out there.
And I was drowning, but now I'm swimming through stressful water time in hell. And what I won't tell you, I'll probably never even tell myself.
I love that line there.
Now we're even in the two songs.
That line there where he says, and what I won't tell you, I'll probably never tell myself.
Yeah. That and I was drowning, but now I'm swimming are like pretty. I guess I don't really know too much of his work in terms of, well, really any of it. But, when you said he was more of like a party song or frat rap, I guess is the term, maybe.
Well, that's what he was called. He didn't.
Yeah.
He didn't love that, but in it, you can see it when you listen to his old stuff. It's totally different.
Yeah, but I was drowning, now I'm singing, and then what I won't tell you, I'll probably never even tell myself. Like those are really mature ways to write about in your introspective feelings about love, your relationship with yourself, whatever it is.
Yeah,
pretty cool. All right, let's go back to the Rayland version.
Don't feel right when you're inside all day. I wish it's nice out, but it looks to me like it's a pouring rain. In the gray skies, I'm drifting, not living forever. They told me it only gets better. Oh, my regrets look just like text I shouldn't send.
I'll let him finish out the song. You've listened to all these songs, right? Side by side, Mac Miller and Rayland. Is this the only one that he goes more up tempo than the actual version?
Good
I have
question.
to go back and look through it because this is faster tempo than the actual Mac Miller one.
Yeah, good question. I can't actually remember.
Yeah, which it seems like the Small Worlds that we did before, he slowed down a little bit.
Rayland did.
Rayland did from the Mac Miller version. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll finish out the Mac Miller version.
Don't you know there's sunshine?
It's good that they're in the same key. It makes the transition better.
Yeah.
I wish it was nice out, but it looked like rain. Gray sky.
I'm also happy that Rayland didn't do it in a way that was like, the Ryan Adams 1984 Taylor Swift album.
Yeah.
Like it's like so different, and they're not even really the same. Like they don't even sound the same unless you're really paying attention to the words or whatever.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you don't know that there's Mac Miller songs, but like if you go and if you knew them already or whatever, I like how these are like tip of the cap to him more so than like I'm gonna do an obscure cover.
Yeah. It's like
he could have just picked up a guitar and like done it an acoustic album, and I don't think it would have had the same effect.
right. He definitely did them justice, and it was a total compliment.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
pretty cool.
All right, well, I think that's what we got time for, Joe. And that's a good episode. It's an episode. I don't know if it's good yet. We haven't listened to it yet.
We're about to find out.
Hopefully, thanks for coming on the show. Don't be a stranger. Hope you come back again soon.
Absolutely, I'd love to. It was a good time.
We have to find some more folk meets rap tributes.
Yeah, where the heck are we gonna find that?
I know. Unfortunately, they probably have to be for sad reasons, which is you don't want. So, but no, that was fun. That was cool. Thanks for doing that. And I'm gonna have to actually go and listen to. There's 1, 2, 3, 5 other songs on this that I can go educate myself on the Mac Miller versions. So I'm gonna go do that.
Yeah, they're honestly, this is one of my favorite albums. I've been listening to it all week, and it's really good. And going back through the Mac Miller stuff is a ton of fun too. And,
You know what I'm gonna do? I just thought of this. I'm gonna make a playlist. I'm gonna put both of them back to back, all the songs back to back, and I'll tweet it out after this episode drops on Tuesday this week.
Sick. That'll be awesome.
So we can follow it and do our own analysis of it back and forth.
Sounds good, man.
Thanks for coming back on the show. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, dude. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yeah, man.
See ya.
You're looking better every day. Write you letters, only write that right after love. I write my name if it's forever or never. It's all the same under the weather. Feel much better when that weather isn't red.